Hey guys, I was sitting napping making tools and I was inspired to do a really quick video. I thought it would be helpful. The first thing I ever made when I got an antler and came home after I acquired a moose antler was I made an early archaic adze, and I wasn't very good at thinning, so I decided I wanted to make something and be successful. So I wanted to make something that was thick and maybe not too technical, so I made an early archaic adze and spent a long time on it. But as I was making tools today, because I have a bunch of pretty solid but very tough chert of odd shapes and sizes, so I was using it to make tools. And I just finished this adze here, pretty similar to the first one I made, except for a little nicer. And I have this old adze that I found. This is made out of probably a stained piece of cotter or chert. You can see how resharpened it is. This is the bit end and this is the pole end. And a lot of these archaic adzes, if they're tapered and kind of thin on the back and they're ground like this, that's because they have pole grinding, because the adze was hafted with a backstop on the handle. And if you go get a, pretend like this is a tree. If you want to get a quick handle for an adze, and you see just a dying or standing dead tree, or just a tree that you want to get rid of, and you can select what is the right handle thickness that you want, and then you can imagine just like cutting the tree and then cutting it here and cutting it here for the correct angle. You don't want it straight in, depending on what you're doing, and you don't want it too acute in here. So, and then you can just cut the handle off to the desired length. Usually just cut it longer than you want to. And then this is where your adze will rest, if there's enough width on the branch. And then you just, you shelf it out and you tie it on. And if you use this knotty section there as the back, in the case where if you do want to, it to be back. Not all adzes have to be that way. They can just be tied on. And then you can make a quick handle for an adze. And then if you use rawhide and tie it on, it's like prehistoric shrink wrap, or you can use cordage or whatever. Some adzes are flat on the bottom. Some adzes are even like almost fluted out, where they had careful shims in there. There's all kinds of adzes during different cultural periods, and they're all pretty specific. But this is a general archaic adze that's been really resharpened down. You can tell where the handle went in. And what happens is, when you wear them down, is that wood chips get shimmed underneath there, and it just gets short to the point where you either have to modify your handle or you have to make a new adze. So this thing was probably spent and discarded. The bits on them are usually really nice. I made this one with a couple of resharpenings. And you can do punch work or pressure on the bits, but it's really important to have a little bit of an angle this way, and then a nice sharp edge this way. And then if they chip or get too dull, then they can just be resharpened. But it's also nice if they're flat here, so that you can tie them on. Some adzes will have a little belly on the bottom, and then the handle will just have to be adjusted, or maybe a padding of leather or rawhide put underneath to absorb some of that. Now, there's some earlier adzes, like the Dalton period. They can get pretty heavy. I just made this one, and some of these things are so well made. This one isn't. This is just an average. But sometimes the edges are almost stitched and very carefully done. And the grinding along the margins can indicate, in some instances, how far the adze was sticking out from the haft. But it's important to have the bits really well done. And this kind of Dalton adze is nice and flat on the bottom. Mississippian adzes of some varieties will be very thin, and they'll have a little bit of a curve. You see how this one's got a little rock like this? They'll be really thin and often made out of this kaolin chert, because this is the best, toughest, glassy, durable, edge holding up stuff that's ever probably made. And then the tops will be even ground and polished. And then they're thin enough on the edges. These things weren't used to just whack away and cut down big timbers. These things are for specific woodworking. And so the lightness of them, but the effectiveness of the bit, I mean, there's different cultures that had different reasons for tools. Like picks can get into corners and gouges, and some of them in the Mississippian period are so well crafted. And a lot of times they'll just grind. They'll grind them on the top, and then sometimes they'll grind at the bottom of the bit and keep that angle perfect. So that's and here's another one I made out of Fort Payne, kind of a Mississippian one. I still have to finish the bit on it. These things can get really polished. Most of the ones made out of Dover and Fort Payne will be a little heavier. But this was a rock that it's heavy enough to work, although it's not as good as kaolin. So, narrower ones. Narrower ones can, just be smaller, get into little, finer areas. And, they can range a lot. All over the world they're making woodworking tools. Now, some of the tools that there are diggers, like spades, hoes, and diggers. The polish on them will tell you if they're digging roots or if they're using them for farming. Sometimes the edge can't be as sharp if you're working a spade in sandy and not rocky soil. Obviously, there's a reason why you don't find Mill Creek spades in the Ozarks, right? Because they'll just get disintegrated by rocks. But some root diggers, like in the late Archaic, they'll have a different kind of polish. They can be kind of a woodworking tool, and then as they get dull, they can get in the ground and chop, and you don't want the edges to be that sharp then when you're just grazing rocks and hitting roots and stuff like that. So, but it's fun to make these tools, and if you're getting turtlebacks in your knapping and you want to focus on just one side, you can work on knapping and keep those contours smooth, and then even practice pressure, like I was saying, on some of that stuff. So maybe I can get a piece of Burlington and a hammerstone here in a little bit and make a quick one, sort of like this. It's a good use of tough material, and they're fun to make. So some of the tools are technically as complicated and awesome as any artifacts out there, and they've really been overlooked by modern knappers for whatever reason. So anyhow, I hope that was somewhat informative. And if you get yourself a wooden handle and you make one and you start messing around with it, and then you'll figure out how you want your edges, and that'll match up with a lot of the old ones, and they last. If you don't abuse them, they last a long time. So anyhow, fun thing to make, and something for you beginner knappers that are having a hard time thinning and want to make stuff, or make stuff and use stuff. Think about making tools like that, and maybe one of these days I'll go out and cut a branch and do some of that, because it is kind of fun.